by trade is
right. So, yo, shout out to my dad, right?
Yeah.
Like growing up, bro, it was very process oriented.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Brandon Rule here, Be Rule on all platforms. I have a dear friend of mine, Chris Jefferson, who has arrived. We're talking about business, but really about the mindset and the importance of relationships as it relates to business. If you stay tuned, hopefully you could take a few of these gems and add it to your own, and that'll exacerbate and scale and grow your business in itself. Again, thank you for being here. Stay tuned.
You know I came from the struggle, but I was made for the hustle. Out of the concrete jungle, I made my way out the tunnel. This for the entrepreneurs, this who I market it for. We see the obstacles, yeah, we acknowledge them all. When people was doubting it all, we conquered it all. Listen to stories from people I met, dealing with real estate, dealing with tech. 24/7, they get to the check, breaking the barriers people have set. One man clubhouse road, look what the concrete grows. Rose that the sunlight views, sun in the hand B-rolls. Look at the rose that grew.
What's up, brother?
Yeah, what's good, man? What's good?
Appreciate you joining me here, man.
Absolutely, man.
Long
Absolutely.
overdue. We've been talking about this for a while. I've been talking about my podcast for a while, and this one of the people that's gonna push me like, hey, stop talking. Let's
Right,
do it.
it's
You
time
feel
to
me?
get it
Let's
done.
get it. Let's do
Absolutely.
it. Like, let's push it. So, out here in beautiful San Diego,
Man, beautiful.
enjoying a phenomenal weekend and just fellowship. And before we hopped out, we had to make sure this happened.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely, man. I'm glad we're getting it done. I'm proud to see you doing it. You know,
Yeah.
I think it's important for the culture.
It's time, bro.
Absolutely.
It's time. So, let's start off by, for those who may not know you, tell the people a little bit about yourself.
Man, it's crazy, man. Chris Jefferson, Richmond, Virginia. Been in real estate 12 years now, which seems like even crazy to say at 35 years old. Started out as a wholesaler, then I got into buying property, just different things, man. You know, rentals, you know, fix and flips, new construction. You know, it's been a wild ride. I'll put it that way, man. It's been a lot of, you know, times in the trenches. It's been a lot of, you know, tragedy, triumph. But in reality, every entrepreneur's journey, you know.
Man, that's a fact. But you're unique because you've seen a lot of the aspects of real estate. I mean, from, like you said, wholesaling, fixing and flipping, buying and hold, new build construction, right? Funds, talking to different private equity firms. Like, you have a holistic view of how this goes. And I want to kind of dive into each one of those. This is more of an entrepreneurial podcast and real estate podcast, but our entrepreneurship is real estate in this conversation. So
No doubt.
before we get to any of that, let's rewind. You said I'm Chris Jefferson from Richmond, Virginia. That's where you claim. That's who you
Right,
are, right?
yeah.
Talk to me about that. How did this Chris come up in Richmond, and what was that experience like for you?
Yeah, it's crazy, man. So when people ask me where I'm from, you know, like I'm originally from South Carolina, and I truly kind of identify my roots to who I am, you know, to South Carolina, you know, as a whole. You know, I moved to Richmond when I was in 7th grade, so you know, I'm born in South Carolina, raised in Richmond, you know, and I've been able to get some really dope, impactful lessons, you know, really from both environments. You know, growing up in South Carolina, you know, I'm growing up in a, you know, all-black environment. You know, my parents, my mom's from the country, you know, grew up down the dirt road, middle of nowhere.
What part of South Carolina?
Florence, South Carolina.
Okay.
And my father's from Charleston, South Carolina. Grew up in inner city, worst neighborhood in Charleston. And so, you know, growing up in South Carolina before I moved, man, we were going to one of those two places, you know, every weekend. You know, we were at grandma's house somewhere. And what that was able to do for me at an early age was really kind of give me a unique exposure to different environments, how to interact in different environments, you know, how to communicate in different environments.
Gotcha.
And, you know, I was blessed to grow up upper middle class and be able to see, you know, multifaceted environments, you know, kind of as I was growing up, man. Coming to Richmond was a complete culture shock. You know, I moved up to Richmond. My mom got promoted to 7th grade. You know, I transitioned to an all-white school. And, you know, I never forget, man, like first day of school, walking in, probably like 15, 20 black people in the entire school. And just kind of walking into that kind of unexpectedly, right? Like I'm a kid, moved up here. I had no real expectations of what, you know, the student body of a new school would look like. And so, you know, really spent, you know, probably the first year, you know, really navigating through, you know, how to kind of immerse myself into this new space and kind of move through it correctly, you know?
Yeah, that's so interesting because it's like you were forced to learn life at a young age.
Right.
Right, when you think about life as we in our context is business. And you're forced to figure out how to adapt and change and shift based on the environment in which you're going through or the season. You didn't think about that when you were going from one school to another, but you were forced to learn those skills at that point in your life.
Absolutely.
Do you think that has impacted how you've been able to move that forward?
Man, it's crazy, right? So, I tell people, I feel like I had like the greatest childhood ever.
I love that.
And what I mean by that is, not from a financial standpoint,
For sure.
but from a life lesson, education standpoint. Both my parents, they got divorced when I was in 9th grade, but Dad was still super, super present. And, they were very intentional, man, about giving me lessons. My mom used to have that conversation with me about, like I said, going to an all-white school, making that transition. Even the conversations just simply about, how to move, how to communicate, how to build relationships, how to network, how to find out what others people's, interests are, and how to explore those interests and see if I have any interest in any of those things. And so just being able to develop a skill set of being open-minded, being observant, and, being able to understand the impact of being able to communicate and work with all different types of people.
Yeah, which is a fundamental element of business at the end of the
Facts,
day, right?
right,
Like we
yeah.
get back to that, those are core for the business. So before we get to that side, definitely want to still unpack that. So 2-parent household, which is unique and rare. I come from the same. Brothers, sisters. Can you
Yeah, so
speak
I
to
got a
that?
little brother, man. Shout out to my guy, Dennis, man. And,
Just informally met him.
Yeah.
But-
And so he's 2 years younger than me. He's the smarter version of me, for sure. And, we were 2 years apart, man. So, we were able to, develop like team building skills,
Yeah.
right? Work through problems, brothers fight, family fights, and just figuring out how to, at a base level, I think more than anything, like how do you function and work through something? Like if you're my brother and we got some animosity, we got some sort of issue, whatever the case might be, that's normal, right? Like
That's a fact.
we're not gonna have life situations where we never have problems with the people we love and care about.
That's right.
That's just reality, right?
That's right.
And so understanding and learning how to properly deal with those things, not at first, right? Like, but over time, I think was definitely dope, man. But I think having a sibling close in age is really cool because you essentially grow up together.
Yeah.
Yeah,
2 years. I mean, that's literally back
exactly.
to back.
Right.
That's dope. So he is from, where is he currently living? I think.
So he's out in LA, man.
Okay.
So he's out in LA.
Why did he leave? It seems like you stayed and you put your
Yeah,
fork in the
yeah,
road
yeah.
and he shifted out. What,
It's crazy, man.
what's
My
that
brother
dynamic
is
like?
he's a journeyman.
Okay.
Graduated high school, said that he wanted to be a mechanic,
Okay.
like randomly, like got into cars, and was like, man, I want to be a mechanic. So he moved to Florida, went to a technical school, ended up getting a job at Volvo, out in Arizona. Moved to Arizona for this job at Volvo, and it's like I ain't feeling it. Like
That's not for me.
this ain't what I just thought cars was cool, like learning about them,
Gotcha.
not actually doing the work.
Yeah.
So then he moved back and self-taught himself how to code computers. And his best friend had moved out to LA to kind of pursue some music stuff,
Okay.
And was kind of playing in like kind of random bars and, that kind of thing. And he's talking to my brother one day. My brother was having some of his own challenges, in life. And he was like, look, man, you need a fresh perspective, man. You need a new, space, to kind of grow and operate in. And so my brother, man, he had $2,000 packed up. Him and my dad drove across country.
Wow.
My dad dropped him off and said, figure it out.
Holla at you.
Yeah, figure it out. And that's what he did, man. And so, my brother's somebody I got a lot of respect for because, going somewhere with like an extreme lack of resources and especially somewhere like LA,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Cost of living, pressure, all sorts of stuff, man. So to watch him be able to go into a new space at, really a super young age and figure it out, super dope, man. So he worked at a startup, now he's full-time trading crypto and doing some different things. So definitely dope to see his progression for sure.
That's what's up. Can you segue into why you stayed? I know you jumped around a little bit, but.
Sure, man. So for me, man, at the time, I got into business early.
Okay.
Right,
At what age?
So really, I say 18.
Okay.
All right, and I'll explain why. because I knew at 18 I wanted to be a businessman. Right?
Same,
You know,
yeah.
I grew up. My family traveled a lot. You know,
Okay.
my parents took us a lot of different places, showed us a lot of different things, and I remember being in the airport and seeing, you know, mostly white men, really, in business suits, and you know, the suits, the ties, the briefcase, and then, you know, kind of going into this rabbit hole of, you know, who are black people that look like them, right? Why are there not more of us, you know, at the airport doing business travel and looking like, you know what I mean, like that, look like you doing something, you got something going on.
For sure.
And I just remember at a young age, you know, wanting to be that, you know. And so at 18, I got arrested, man, my senior year of high school. And I got arrested my senior year of high school, was playing ball. And, you know, one going to the league or nothing, man, I'm, you know, looking at D3 offers, you know,
Yeah,
that kind of
yeah.
thing. So D3, right, you don't get scholarships, you get grants, right? And, you know, once I got arrested, man, that just got deaded very fast, got suspended for school for a while. And so I ended up barely graduating, but I had taken a business class my last 2 years of high school. And shout out to my teacher, Miss Draper, man, all right, one of the most impactful people in my entire life. So, you know, I was in this organization called DECA, and you would do these competitions where you would have to sell things or, you know, whatever the case might be.
Gotcha.
And so I ended up placing nationals my first year, and I don't even remember like where I ended up ranking. I didn't win, but you know, her comments to me at the time were like, "Hey, like you got a gift, like you got things that you can do. You got quick, you know, you're quick on your feet. You know how to respond to things. You know how to kind of put stuff together. You know, I know you kind of got this dream of playing ball and doing this and doing that, but you probably could do something with business if you really, really wanted to. You
She
know,
planted that seed in you early.
yeah, she's like, you got that in you, you know.
Yeah.
And so I felt that when she said it, you know. And so I kind of started to get intentional about really kind of pursuing it. So when I graduated high school, man, I was working at FedEx. I don't know if you ever did any work like this, all right? I'm working at FedEx, loading tractor trailers. Like one individual, you gotta load
The whole
or
thing.
unload one entire tractor trailer per hour to keep your job. So like imagine, you know, all these shipment boxes just it's crazy, right? And so I got that job because I wanted to buy a motorcycle, and my parents wouldn't, you know, they wouldn't get it for me.
It was one of the higher paying jobs, I'm assuming,
Right,
because most people won't do it.
Yeah, so 18,
Yeah.
working at FedEx, I was making a nice little check. And so I'm doing that, but I still had this entrepreneur, you know, like void I needed to kind of fill, you know. And, you know, I ended up meeting this guy who owned a mortgage company. So I would get off work at 8:30 in the morning every morning. And because it's an overnight job.
Third shift, yeah.
And I would get off work, and then I would go to this guy's office, and I would follow him around, basically to meetings, looking at different deals that he was putting together. And he was on the lending side, right? So he owned a mortgage shop.
Okay.
And, you know, after a while of following him around, you know, I realized like, man, I don't want to be that. You know, I don't think the finance side of this, you know, is for me. You know, honestly, I didn't feel like I saw enough money on that side of it.
Yeah.
To kind of want to be on that side. I wasn't really creative. And
I mean, on the debt side, you're playing with a spread, right? So
Right, exactly.
If a bank loan is coming to you at 6%, more than likely he has it at 4%.
right, so
And to
you're
your
making
point, it's
points
like,
here and there.
yeah.
Right, yeah. So I just didn't see a real big opportunity to kind of hit it. You know, like I was somebody who always wanted to hit it, you know, like, and what I mean when I say that, I used to talk to my friends growing up about it all the time. Like, we got to really go do something. You know, we got to really go get some money. We got to really go have some impact.
Man.
We got to really make something happen.
That's right.
And I never knew what that was going to end up looking like. But, you know, I kind of started finding entrepreneurship in that process.
Gotcha.
And one day leaving church, and this kind of started my real estate journey, right? Because I knew then I wanted to do real estate in some capacity.
Right.
I think the dope thing about real estate is, you know, I think everybody when they hear that they want to get into real estate or say that, like the first thought is like being an agent, or
Absolutely.
second is like flipping houses or this and the third. But man, you've got, you know, mortgage loan officers, you got appraisers, you got property inspectors, you got all these different facets of, you know, real estate and what you can do to be involved in it. And I had to spend some time kind of figuring out what that was for me. So I knew I wanted to kind of get on the investment side. If more than anything, I knew that's where the money was at, you know, and I knew that was where I could, you know, reflect back on those weekends down the dirt road, or at my, you know, grandparents' house. My grandmother, like I said, lived in the worst city in Charleston, or community in Charleston. You know, she was an entrepreneur. She ran a beauty salon, you know, out of her house. So being able to see that and kind of see those different things, man, kind of started pushing me
towards,
you know, really towards like stepping into that.
Yeah.
And when I kind of started doing it, man, it was kind of crazy because like, I'm leaving church one day. You know, we kind of see these signs all the time, right? We call them bandit signs. I see a sign that says "We buy houses."
That's right.
And you know, I don't know why. You know, in reality, man, I say, you know, God kind of playing my life, right? And so I picked the phone up, called the number on the sign. This guy answers the phone, and I'm like, look, you know, I want to learn how to invest in real estate.
You didn't have a deal. You didn't know what the deal
nothing.
was.
I didn't even know
nothing.
anything about anything. And I'm like, look, I want to work, you know, for you for free. I just want to learn how to invest. You know, is that something you're willing to do? So he's like, man, tell me about yourself. Like, who are you? You know, whatever. So I tell him, like, hey, I'm Chris
How
Jefferson.
old were you at this time?
I was like 18. Like,
still around that
maybe
same-
late 18, maybe had just turned 19.
Still at FedEx.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Okay.
And so, you know, I'm talking to him, and I'm like, man, Chris Jefferson, you know, I went to Atlee High School, you know. And he's like, Chris Jefferson, you went to Atlee? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, you know Gabe? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, that's my son. So his son, we play sports together. And so he's like, look, meet me tomorrow. You know, let's chop it up.
Yeah.
And that's the power of proximity, right?
And relationship.
And relationships, right? Like,
Yeah.
imagine I didn't have a good relationship with his son.
It's dead.
You know? And so, or if it, you know, we had maybe him and I butted heads at some point.
For sure.
Didn't resolve that or whatever the
It's
case
dead.
might be. Could have missed out on an opportunity. So I met up with him. We started chopping it up. And I'm hungry, bro. Like, you know, like I really wanted to figure this out. I really wanted to learn how to make it happen. For me, for this to make sense, for me, you know, I didn't have great grades in school. You know, I graduated close to the bottom of my class. I was too worried about, you know, playing sports and chasing girls and, you know, that kind of thing. As long as I could meet the C requirement to
That's all
play
you
in the
needed.
game, I was cool, you know. And my mom would always say, man, that's going to come back to bite you.
What sports were you playing at that time?
Basketball and football, man.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I kind of transitioned into this and having this conversation with him. And he's like, look, I'll teach you, you know, about, and I didn't know this was what it was at the time, but it was wholesaling.
For sure.
So what he was doing was wholesaling, but I had the perspective that
It was
he was a house flipper or
investor or, yeah, you don't
Right.
know what you don't know.
Yeah, exactly. So he's like, hey man, like this is how you find these houses. You know, look for overstuffed mailboxes, look for overgrown grass, boarded up windows, and bring me the addresses. So any house that I buy, you know, I'll give you $250 to $500. I'm like, bet.
That's all I need to do?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
that's
I'm
the check.
like, $250, $500. You saying all I gotta do is just ride around, find some of these houses, write down the address.
Right.
He's like, yeah, like that's all you gotta do. So I'm like, all right. So I started doing that, man. I sell him a few deals, and I actually ended up talking to a good friend of mine, now. I used to buy and sell sneakers, like in high school, and you know, even after I graduated, like sneaker collector, you know. And I was on a bunch of different like reselling websites and that kind of thing. And I had met a guy that was in the DC area, and he was a wholesaler. So and I just reflected back on these emails a couple months ago. He ended up telling me about actual wholesaling.
Gotcha.
You know, because again, I never realized that that's what this other guy was even, you know, kind of doing. And so I went to this guy, his name's Vernon, man. I went to his website, and he had a check on his website for $34,000. And he was giving away a Jaguar for the next house that he was selling, which is crazy, right?
Crazy.
So like part of his wholesale deal was, hey, if you buy this house, you're also
have
going
a
to
car.
get a Jaguar.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yo, like,
How does that even work?
yo, I'm like,
How's he giving free
yo,
cars out? What?
And a Jaguar, like
What
this is
part
a
of the game was
newer
that?
Jaguar.
Yeah.
So, and because you remember like when the S-Types was hot.
Oh yeah, that was.
This is this time, right? So I'm like,
fire.
hold up, man, hold up. I gotta talk to him,
I'm about to get a Jag.
man. I'm like, I'm about to go crazy. I'm like, let me hit him up. So I hit him up. We talking back and forth, and he kind of, you know, sparked this rabbit hole of figuring out wholesaling early, and I thank him for that all the time, because he planted a seed, you know, unknowingly, and I think there's a lesson in that.
Yeah.
You know, we got to constantly pour into other people's cups because we don't ever know what they might take from that conversation that might spark something in them to go do something great, you know, or solve a problem, whatever the case might be. So, you know, again, man, figured out wholesaling from there, kind of started to get into it. And
Well,
then
let's pause there. For the people that this is their first time hearing about wholesaling.
Sure.
You said we buy ugly houses. You thought that they were going out and being these big time investors, et cetera.
Yeah.
But what they were actually doing is wholesaling. For anyone in the audience that isn't familiar with this term, can you break it down to them, please?
Yeah, sure. So look, like wholesaling is like a super simple concept. Something that I think a lot of people get confused. So wholesaling is the process of, you know, say Brandon has a house that he has for sale that needs a lot of work. Again, that overstuffed mailbox, tall grass, boarded up windows. You know, I might go place a contract on his house for $50,000. That might be what he's willing to take. You know, maybe he's got some code violations or delinquent taxes. You know, he's got some pressure on him, you know, to kind of really do something with this particular property. So I'll put it on a contract with him for $50,000. And then what I will do is then go find what we call cash buyers. So these are people that are looking for flip opportunities, rental opportunities, you know, whatever the case might be. So then we're going to go find that person and we're going to sell the contract to that person, our equitable interest in the contract. Maybe I'll sell it to them for, let's just say $60,000. So there's a $10,000 spread there. As the wholesaler, when I sell my contract or sign the rights to my contract, I'm making that spread of $10,000.
So when they said we buy ugly houses, the majority of those homes, they never really even bought.
Yeah, so like that's a good point. So, you know, often when you see those bandit signs, they tend to be from wholesalers. And, you know, the art of wholesaling is not taking possession all the time or a majority of the time. You know, there are situations in wholesaling. I know from my own business, we do a lot of different things where you do take possession or you take possession for a short period of time.
That's right.
You know, there's a method we do now where we call it wholetailing.
Wholesaling.
Wholesaling,
okay, break
right?
it down for me.
So wholetailing is...
That's new to me.
All right, so look, so like, and wholetailing is where the money's at.
Okay.
So wholetailing is the art of combining a retail sale with the wholesale transaction. So, you know, same scenario, right? Maybe I get your property under contract, you got whatever you got going on.
Yeah.
I get your property under contract for that $50,000.
Okay.
But, you know, maybe this, you know, kind of underworld market of cash buyers isn't the highest, you know, and best buyer to sell a deal to.
That's real, especially in the multifamily space.
Right. Yeah, especially in multifamily. And so what you end up doing is a process of actually purchasing and acquiring that home. So I'll buy it from you for the $50,000, right? So, you know, whether it's with a hard money loan, a private loan, you know, we're in a climate right now where, this is a misconception, like obtaining financing is extremely easy.
There's a lot of cash right now.
Yeah,
They're looking for ways to park it.
Absolutely. And so you're finding somebody that's going to give you that $50,000. They're not checking your credit or running a background or doing this and do that. But I'm actually taking that and then I'm going to put it on, where would all the largest cash buyers be? Where's the biggest population of cash buyers? That's going to be the MLS. So we're going to buy that property for the $50,000, but then we're going to go list it on the MLS. The beauty in that is when you do that, you know, the cash buyer, that kind of underworld network that I'm talking about, those are like the hardcore investors that know about wholesaling and are kind of in the trenches, right? But you've got your casual guy that's at a Fortune 500 company. You know, you got men and women there that, you know, maybe they got a great job and they want to kind of diversify their income. They want to, you know, build a retirement. They want to build some college, you know, money for their children. Maybe they want to go buy a rental property. You know, those folks, their first inclination is not to look for a wholesaler. They're going to make contact with the realtor and they're going to have a realtor kind of go search for an investment opportunity for them. And so wholetailing is essentially the art of getting getting your deal in front of the largest pools of buyers as possible. And oftentimes you're going to come across more casual investors. So, you know, in our earlier scenario, right, I sold that deal from you and made $10,000.
Yeah.
When you're wholesaling, that $10,000 then turns into $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 because you have more casual and, quite frankly, right, like less sophisticated buyers that are going to be willing to pay more money for it for whatever reason.
And it sounds like this typically works in a market like now, which is a seller's market.
Absolutely.
Because if there was a buyer's market, and there was a surplus of inventory, I would think supply and demand would tell me that these quiet offline buyers would then be the higher premium.
Of course,
Right,
yeah.
because these folks over here are super selective.
Right.
They want it to be cookie cutter,
Simple,
and these folks are
clean.
just trying to invest. So there's a balance between people looking for homes for themselves and what they're willing to pay,
Right.
and the inventory versus people that are trying to make an investment play on the whole-sale side.
110%.
And depending on whether buyer or seller market, that's when you have to have these different tools and understand which one you want to play.
Yeah, so I really like that statement, right? Because I think something that's like critically important that people knew to the scopes of like this business, like wholesaling and that kind of thing. I call it like a copy and paste type of energy. You know, most people coming in are, looking to figure out how can I copy and paste the play.
Right.
Hey, what exactly is this person doing? How can I copy that and paste it? Let me apply it over here to myself and hope that it works. In some capacities, man, we all have to learn how to be better about thinking outside the box, and kind of formulating thoughts kind of around the opportunity that presents itself. So what this is really kind of doing when it comes to, wholesaling in general is, the concept of what you were talking about is just being more creative in how we think about how we look at opportunities, how we invest, and kind of how we execute on different strategies. So when you talk about, the cycling of the market, I started in 2008 where I really kind of started, like 2008, I was figuring it out. Right? Like, I know you personally, like, so I know your story, right?
Yes.
So I know you've had this moment in time, because I remember mine vividly, right?
Yeah.
Like this moment in time where like, you're not getting no money yet, but you have an energy shift in your life.
Oh, this is where I need to be.
Like, okay,
Yeah.
like, it ain't hit yet.
It's about to go.
Right, but I'm on to something though.
Yeah.
And so in 2008, I was in a period where, I had been studying real estate, man, for years, right? I graduated high school in 04. So 04 to 08, I'm studying.
Yeah.
And when I say studying, to
Put in
be
that
clear,
work.
I'm talking about nonstop. Like I wasn't doing nothing else. Like I wasn't
Full
like
time.
going
in the
crazy
lab.
playing video games. I'm not going to the movies. I'm not dating, super crazy or doing this and doing that. I'm not going to the club. I'm not, just shooting it with my boys 24/7. I'm really locked in, trying to figure this thing out and trying to really kind of crack this code.
Yeah.
Really in hindsight, what it was is develop a strategy, right? Develop an approach.
Yeah.
And so, as you start to function and develop that, that's when you really can kind of harness energy, because you have that moment
That's right.
where you're like, man, like I'm cooking something up. Like,
And that's not a singular moment. I want to pause there. I know we've
Yeah,
been
go,
diving
go,
into
yeah.
wholesaling, but let's talk about that when you feel something in you that's about to blow.
Yeah.
I feel like these moments happen every few years, right? It's like
100%.
I'm evolving into this new thing, and although the world may not know I'm there yet, I know it, so I feel good. I say all that to say, let's think together and quantify a way to describe this to people, so if they're in that moment, they know they have it. Can you give me something that could?
That's a great question, right? So, just thinking back, for myself and the feeling of that moment, for me, man, right? Like I think it's God, personally, right?
For sure.
And
For sure.
I was feeling a lot of resistance
Okay.
in the pursuit.
Okay.
All right. And I think understanding and appreciating resistance is important, right? Because, it's like when you're trying to open that tough jar, right? Like you might got to run some hot water on it, right? And you twisting it, but it's
with a butter knife, something.
yeah, but it's some resistance,
Yeah.
right? But you got to work through that to get it open.
That's right.
Life, in my opinion, really isn't any, different. That moment and being able to recognize it, my advice, really would kind of be centered around being open enough to feel the resistance.
Mm-hmm.
Being open enough to not, let the resistance push you.
That's right.
It's going to be difficulty swimming against the current, right? But you got to get to where you got to go at the end of the day. And so my advice, or kind of how to get the awareness, right, is when you start to feel that, I know it doesn't feel good. For me, September 2008, Lehman Brothers falling, I'm just starting to get that into my genius zone, as they would call it.
Whoa.
Man, it's like, hold up. So as soon as I finally start to get some legs here,
It's cracking.
boom,
Break.
man, devastating, right? So I'm like, I just was kind of getting wheels,
Yeah.
and it's like, boom, the market starts to bottom, and I don't know what it was for me. I don't know what article I read or what moment it was, but I know it didn't just come from me myself.
Couldn't.
But I remember the moment of recognizing opportunity. So you made a comment that I ironically make all the time, that I think we get these unique moments of opportunity in life every so often.
That's right.
Right? Of course we're going to get regular opportunity, but I'm talking about every so often, like I think like 2-3 times a lifetime.
Yeah.
Right? We
I
get
can
like
see
these
that.
unique moments of opportunity where it could go one or two ways.
And typically it's either going all the way up or
all
all
the way down. And you got to be able to be in the moment and really kind of discern, like, well, is this the right move? Is it not? And so if you're letting that resistance push back on you, you're not even going to be in a space where you can clearly see these unique opportunities that happen. And so
Facts.
I was in a point, man, where, and again, I really don't know where it came from. Like I've self-reflected on this. Like I actually have no idea where it came from, but I had the awareness in September of 2008 to feel it and be like, man, like something going on.
So let's get into the weeds in a second.
Yeah.
Eric Thomas, man.
Yeah.
Follow him for a very long time. Shout out to ET. He has a quote that I will always live with. You have to take advantage of an opportunity of a lifetime during the lifetime of that opportunity.
Right.
So what you just said is really captured in that moment of like, yo, there's a very small window that is opening for you.
Right.
And this is the opportunity of a lifetime. Are you prepared to be able to go through that?
100%.
And then typically when that happens, that's when people describe it as luck.
That's
Preparation plus opportunity equals luck.
Right.
Right?
100%.
So when that opportunity, that small window was there and you bust through it because you were prepared to, from 04 to 08, you did nothing but put yourself in a position to go through that opportunity.
So I want to tell you this, bro. So I had this guy, I had this contractor who I used to like follow him around too. Like I had this thing where I would follow people around. Right?
Okay, so it wasn't just the We Buy Homes guy.
Yeah, like I've done it with a lot of people, right?
Yeah.
Like if I see somebody that's doing what I'm trying to do, or excelling at something, I'm on your hip. I'm gonna figure out how to get value to
One
you,
way or another.
but I'm gonna get within your sphere.
And can you talk to how you do that and then keep going in the conversation?
Yeah. So for sure,
'Cause
man.
that's super important for people to understand and learn.
So I actually met his wife first.
Okay.
All right, we had a class together when I was in school, and relationships, right? And so she would hear me, because I was in this like rebellious mode.
Okay.
Right, like I'm learning this school thing. I'm in school for real estate, by the way.
Oh, so this is college.
Right. And so I'm coming to class. I'm self-studying at home. So I'm kind of coming to class like, bro, I'm like, y'all in chapter 3, but I'm on 12 though.
Yeah.
And I'm starting to get to a point where I'm like, I'm pushing back in class.
Y'all not moving the way we supposed to be moving right now.
Like y'all trying to teach me how to get a job and this, that, and the third. So she came up to me like, hey, you really should meet my husband. And so I'm like, well, what does your husband do? And this is a lesson in being humble. I said, well, what does your husband do? She said, well, he's a contractor. I don't want to be no contractor. Like, what do I need to meet your husband for? I'm trying to own buildings. I'm trying to build stuff. I'm trying to do this. I'm trying to do that. And, every couple of classes, like, hey, like, you really should meet my husband. And so we get to these points in our development where, like that voice that's in your head, it's like, I felt a voice that's like, hey, that's a connection that needs to be made for you.
The resistance was actually on the other side. If you think about it, you were resisting.
That's facts. Yeah,
when you
yeah.
shouldn't have been.
That's real. And so I'm having this moment where I'm like, I'm getting this voice. And we all have that voice, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And, I'm like, man, like, okay, like, let me see what's up.
Yeah.
So I go meet with her husband. This guy's a character, man. Like,
Okay.
he's a contractor. Like,
Black, white, what's his profile?
Hispanic guy.
age?
Hispanic guy. So
Okay.
his wife was white. Hispanic guy.
How old was he?
He was older, man. He's probably like late 40s at the time.
Cool.
And you know, I'm telling you this because a conversation him and I had, and we started hanging out by me, really just showing up at his job sites. And
here.
I'm not even helping, bro. So I'm not even in there, you know, helping with painting or doing this. I'm not like,
hands on.
nah, I'm in there like, why are you doing that? Hey, why did you demo before you framed? Hey, why did you, you know, do the plumbing and make all these repairs
Learning
before
the process.
Right. And so he recognized that.
Okay.
Right. And it wasn't spoken at the time, but he recognized that. But when it was spoken, that moment was, we were sitting in my truck one day, and I was having a moment of feeling resistance, right? And because stuff won't hit me yet, right? And because again, I was in that moment where I felt it, but nothing, it hadn't translated financially yet. And those could be frustrating times.
Yeah.
And so I'm having one of those moments, man, and we're chopping it up. And he's like, Chris, listen, man. You know, you're early 20s. Like, you're really unnecessarily stressing yourself out.
You have time.
You got time,
Be patient,
bro.
Learn it. Patience.
Exactly. He's like, man, you're gonna make money.
Yeah.
Like, he said, you one of them people, I can tell.
One way or another,
You're gonna figure it out. You're gonna make some money with this thing. But you're focused and stressing about that. And he said, every time I'm around you, all I hear you talking about is not making the money yet. How you're not able to do this yet, or not able to buy this yet, or whatever the case might be. And he goes, man, just like get deep in the process. Just get real deep in the process. Just understand what's going on here.
Yeah.
And he says, what you don't want to happen is to have this opportunity, be in this position, and you're so focused on the money, you miss the opportunity. And he was like, man, like, just really start to get deep in this.
Money can never be the driver
Ever.
for why you're doing something.
And it takes time to learn that.
That's right.
But I remember, I'm one of those people, man, like, if you give me some game, I'm going to self-reflect on it. I want to see if it makes sense for me. And if it does, I'm applying it.
That's right.
And so when I had that conversation with him, I'm like, that makes sense. All right, why am I thinking about money all the time? Like, why am I waking up frustrated because I haven't made any money yet? I'm living with my mom and broke and da-da-da-da. The moment I made that shift, in that moment where I'm like, hey, I'm going to chase down just opportunity, right?
It's kind of rooted in purpose and or impact.
Right, 100%.
It's like, yo, I'm driven by this impact, and the byproduct is the money.
So let's talk about that, because the impact did drive it. So again, like I said earlier, man, I grew up upper middle class. When we moved to Richmond, right, it was like, you know, Jefferson is literally, right, like moving up, right? Like,
love it.
life got lit.
Your
right?
parents, were they high school grads?
Yeah, so my parents high school grads, both my parents college educated.
Oh man, that's amazing.
Mom's an AKA, dad's an alpha. You know, so you know, my parents were very much, you know, go to college folks.
I see the black and the gold in the you, man.
There you go.
See the black and the gold in the you, man.
That's facts.
Just an
man.
observation.
Nah, that's real. That's real. That's real. And so, you know, that college, man, that won't really my thing. Like, cause again, man, like I told you, I'm in college, realizing in those moments, again, recognizing opportunity.
Yeah.
This all kind of ties to the same concept. I'm in college. Now, look, I gotta be honest too, right? Like, I'm in college. I don't want this to come off like I'm just focused on class all the time.
You were doing other things.
Listen, man, I had the motorcycle I told you I had saved up for.
You got it.
I got the new Infiniti.
It sounds like you were a person that was able to get things that you wanted.
There you go.
And in college, you were fully
I was enjoying that ability, man.
Yes.
And you know, over time, I'm phasing out of different things, and I'm like, man,
Maturation.
they really teaching me how to go get a job. So I'm paying to go to school. I'm over here hoping to be a businessman. I'm still that person that was looking at people in the airport with suits and briefcases. But when I'm going to these, you know, conferences that the school is putting together and these little workshops with different organizations, the Tallheimers and CBREs and you know Cushman and Wakefield's, and they're coming in to speak with us. And I'm like, oh, they prepping us to get a job.
Oh, for sure.
So I'm like, I thought I was learning how to develop real estate, but that's not what I'm learning. That's the name of the program.
Ooh.
That might be the major, but I was really being taught how to go get a job at a real estate development company.
That's right.
And once I had that awareness, man, I had a guy who I call a mentor, really. You know, I had a conversation with him, and I'm like, man, I think I'm gonna drop out. And he's like, you know, to do what? Like, I'm like, man, to do the real estate. And he's like, because I've been doing some stuff with him too. And he's like, man, you can do it if you want it. Like, you got it. Like, if you want to do it, like, you got the ability to do it. Now, the reality of it is, ironically, you know, I was gonna get out of school either way, right?
Either you was leaving or they wanted
pushing
you to
me
leave.
out. Like, they had sent me the academic probation letter, right? So either way, it was gonna shake out.
So it was a mutually agreed upon.
Yeah, it was a mutual departing, right?
Yes.
And so, you know, I'm back at my mom's house, man. Like I told you, bro, my parents college educated, right?
Oh, so let's talk about the mindset.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Going to your alpha father, your alpha mother, and saying, "Hey guys."
Yeah, bro. So
it didn't work out.
Yeah, man. Yeah, that was
what did that do to you mentally?
Man, that was tough, man, because that was my first lesson in realizing sometimes you're alone. Because even with people close to you, it's not a reflection on them, it's just a reflection on what they know.
Yeah.
And so the reality of it was this, right? You know, both my parents were born in 1955.
Okay.
All right. Like I said, man, my father's from the worst community in Charleston, South Carolina. My mom grew up on a dirt road in a random city in America, in South Carolina. Right? They did what they had to do to be able to do what they could do for me and my brother.
That's right.
And what that looked like for Black Americans born at that time was that you were gonna go to school, get a job,
that's right,
and start trying to climb some semblance of the corporate ladder, right? Really work for my mom. Started as a bank teller to become a vice president at National Bank, right?
Wow.
And
30 years later, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. But think about that time, right? And so, you know, my dad had to go military, and you know, then kind of make some things.
Those were really the only options for
that's
real.
That's all you can do,
or
get a factory job.
Yeah.
Right.
Or become a street pharmacist.
Perhaps, right? And so, you know, you start looking at all these things, man, and then I had this realization, like, oh, like they don't get it because they can't get it. It's not that they have a problem with me. It's not that they don't want to understand, but all they know, I'm a direct descendant of slaves. Like all my parents know is to go get a job, go to school, go get a job, climb that ladder.
I want to highlight something that I realized through this conversation. The majority of folks, your parents included, because it's the way that we've been wired, typically focuses on the what. And hear me out on this. Let's use the contractor as an example. When most people would go into that building and he's painting the wall or doing demolition or putting in framing or plumbing, the contractor is going to naturally talk about the what.
Right.
He's going to say, yo, this is how you paint a wall.
Right.
This is how you frame a building. That's more so the what.
Right.
What you were focusing on was the how and really the why.
Right.
And it was like, yo, how are you going about this process?
Right.
Not this micro, but this macro. And that perspective is what's different from you than the previous generations that we've been, you know, our family, the people that came before us.
So here's what's important in that. My dad, you know, he's an engineer, right? So, you know, and military.
Yeah, by trade is
right. So, yo, shout out to my dad, right?
Yeah.
Like growing up, bro, it was very process oriented, right? You know, so you know the life focus was, you know, the why.
But you know what? It's through a very specific lens or framework, and I think that's where it's different for you.
100%.
You're looking at it differently. Think about an engineer. They're structuring it from just this.
Right.
And think about the military. It's like it's structured from just that.
Right.
The things beyond the engineer, we hire engineers all the time.
To do that for us.
They're looking at the bigger play because their job is
singular
to do this,
too.
even though it's process oriented.
But that's why I think, man, like, absorbing these influences around you and being open to that at all times is so important. Because
That's a fact, bro.
because that the reason I read books today, right, is because my military dad would lock me and my brother in a room, right?
This is what you are going to do.
For an hour you're reading,
Yeah.
right? Like,
And it's ingrained in you.
and that's what it is, right? So now there's not a stress point to read a book, but like that's also why we have to be intentional. Again, all this ties in together, right? It's like of having impact, being intentional, right?
Yeah.
Like being willing in communication and conversation to openly plant seeds or just give information, because we don't even know what might become a seed.
To that, how has your upbringing in that way impacted the seeds that you brought into the world?
Yeah, man. So, you know, like I've been able to kind of realize, you know, like when it comes to parenting, right?
Yes.
Like you have to be in a space of knowing that they're inside of their own growth and evolution themselves. You get what I mean?
That's right.
And so, you know, I don't have this expectation, you know, like dealing with my daughter, right? Where I'm like, I don't expect her to get something right away. Like at one point, you know, like she was struggling in school, and you know, she would get upset. You know, maybe call herself a name, or you know, cry, or whatever the case might be. And like I would tell her at the time, I'm like, listen, I'm not worried about the grades.
It's okay.
I just really care, are you moving forward? Like, are you working on yourself? Are you growing? Are you trying to figure out where your weaknesses are? Are you focused on getting better? You know, like the D and F, like I'll deal with that. Like I'll talk to your teacher, like, you know, but I don't care.
Yeah.
Right? Like I'm not upset with you for getting a D or an F. What I would be upset about is if you're not in the process of trying to figure it out.
Really effort versus
There you go.
grade, right? Like if you got a D or F, but you put A-B effort into it,
Right.
you can be comfortable with that for now. We'll figure out what that tweak is. And it's not on you. You as a parent are gonna help them figure it out.
100%.
But if you putting D to F effort into it, now I have an issue with you.
100%, man, because I mean, and we've heard this saying, right? Like, you know, effort beats talent. I believe that.
100%.
You know, like I truly believe effort beats talent.
I agree. bro.
And so kind of getting into these zones and trying to get into these spaces where you develop the understanding of consistency, right? Like
Develop the understanding of
develop the understanding of consistency. Like I said, man, I started trying to learn real estate in 2004.
And didn't really start till 2008, it sounded like.
Didn't really start till 2008. I didn't really make any money until 2010. So we're talking about 6 years
Of work.
of just working, right? But effort towards the process.
Yeah.
So for me, you know, I've had these moments in learning different things that I'm trying to do, right? Because I'm learning different new things now, right? And for me, it's always the same, man. Like, I don't care about the money, right? You know, like, and I literally don't care about the money at all.
Yeah.
For me, it's just always the understanding, man, the more I figure out this process, the more time I spend on it, as long as I can develop the consistency
Yeah.
to stay attached to it,
Yeah.
it's gonna work.
100%.
I just gotta accept, might not happen on my timeline. It might not look the way I want it to look. It might not be as much as I wanna make or whatever the case might be, but each time I got another chance at seeing the process,
That's right.
tweaking the process, and really refining it to then over time, and really, you know, where I'm at now, right? Where it's like, then it's starting to compute in a way where now it's compounding at a rate that's unexpected to what you could have even predicted.
Let's go there, man, because this convo, this was more of a philosophical convo than anything else,
no
to
doubt,
be real,
yeah.
right? Like, we could talk about all the doors that you've done, the hundreds of projects that you completed, the 27 flips you had at one point in time.
Right.
But just the way the convo went, like getting into the minutia of the thought process, I think was important for this.
Yeah.
And now that you've done all of this, your resume speaks for itself, which you can give them a quick recap, but matter of fact, let's do that. From the time where you're learning all of this, you made your first money in 2010.
Right.
So now we're in 2022. just give us a brief summary of what you've done during that time,
Right.
and then go into how you've created really a membership community
Yeah.
of folks that are desiring and looking for this information.
Yeah.
And you really took the leadership to say, yo, I'm gonna be the one to disseminate to folks and do it in an ethical way,
Yeah.
so we could all build and grow.
Yeah, man. So, kind of at the beginning of my real estate journey, I was in wholesaling, but remember what I said, right? The market bottomed out.
Okay.
What's important to kind of understand about wholesaling is, as the market shifts, like you were saying, like when you're dealing with the evolution of a market cycle, there's not as many buyers for investment properties when you're in a buyer's market, right? That happened to me relatively quickly getting into wholesaling. Like that happened fast. And so, I got this thing, man. I'm like, you always got to know when to pivot, on something, right? You got to use your pivot foot.
Yeah.
And so that was my first time learning, like, all right, man, got to use your pivot foot a little bit here. And so, Bush had came out with the home buyer tax credit, first time home buyer tax credit.
Yeah, I remember that.
All right.
The homestead.
Yes, right. And so I remember seeing that. And I remember being like, man, this is going to trigger the greatest transfer of wealth in my lifetime. Now, I don't think that anymore, but I think that that was a moment of insane wealth transfer.
For sure.
I know a lot of people, I didn't have the knowledge at the time to really get to where I could have gotten, right? But I know a lot of people that were in position to in a crazy way to take advantage of that moment.
Yeah.
And kind of shoot far, man. And so, I just had that wherewithal of, again, like I was saying earlier, I don't know where it came from, but like, oh, something's going on, right? Like, okay, tax credit, they're gonna give anybody who buys a house for the first time $6,500. Why wouldn't people use that?
Free money?
So, right, free money.
Literally.
So my pivot was, okay, we're gonna start doing affordable houses. And again, I don't even know where these thoughts were coming from. Really, it was God, right? And it's like, okay, I need to get into affordable housing. And so I'm looking, I'm like, well, what's
I think you're critical thinking. Like that makes
right,
sense.
100%.
If people need homes and the majority of the folks can't, frankly, buy homes,
right,
then you need product that people can buy.
100%.
I mean, that's common sense, really.
Facts. And this is why I tell people Google's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm Googling, all right, what is the average first-time home buyer price, home purchase price in Richmond, Virginia? That data's out there, right?
It is.
So I see at the time that it's around 250,000. I'm sorry, let me back up. It's around 150,000.
Okay.
All right, because the market had bottomed out. It was 250,000. That shows you the drastic kind of change and swing in the market.
Wow.
So I'm like, okay. So I'm like, all I need to do is provide housing at or below 150,000. All right? Makes a lot of sense, right?
Yes.
And so that was my first pivot. I got into doing fix and flips. And so I did my first fix and flip, making some money. And I'm kind of doing a few, but then I bump into, someone who's been a business partner, friend, and I bump into her. We don't know each other at all. She's an older white lady. I'm looking at a house down the street in the neighborhood that somebody else was flipping. You know how sometimes you just walk into a project, that door open, you gotta see what's going on, right?
Yeah.
It's that unspoken, kind of thing in real estate. So I kind of go into this house and looking around, whatever, I'm going to leave. As I'm leaving out the door, she's walking in the door. And I kind of startle her. She's kind of like, yo, who are you? What are you doing? I'm like, hey, I'm Chris Jefferson. I'm flipping a house down the street. So I'm telling her, she's like, hey, we should talk. Her and I end up talking. We, fast forward a bit, we become business partners at the time.
Nice.
And we go on to flip, that same year that we met. We flipped, I think it was like 38 houses that year together. And
what was her role? What was your role? Just really
yeah,
briefly.
sure. So she was more of it on the agent side.
Okay.
She had experience. She had gotten hit by the market. This is 2010. She had gotten hit a bit by the market in the last, between 2008 2010. She was in her own recovery period and trying to figure out how to kind of put things back together herself.
Well, she knew this house would go for 117, this one would go for 183.
Exactly.
And you shouldn't buy it at this if you need X amount of construction.
Right. I didn't have concept of I was still kind of learning the numbers. How do you comp? How do you understand values? How do you understand what to offer? You know, so she provided that level of expertise to what I was trying to do.
Nice.
And I was willing to trust her, you know, opinion. And so we became business partners. We do all these deals together. And at some point, you know, I'm young. I'm really young at the time. You know, I'm like 24. And, you know, I made my first million in real estate, flipping all these houses. And so we're focusing on that 150,000 and below product. But as you know, that was in a 2-year window that this is happening for me. So we've done like close to 80 houses in that 2-year window, right? But then the market is swinging up. You know, by 2012, it's going up.
Yeah, definitely
right?
was.
And so I see that too.
Okay.
And so, again, another pivot opportunity. So at the time, again, she was my agent. At the time, we could literally, if I wanted to buy 5 houses today, I could call her and say, hey, let's buy 5 houses. She could go find 5 houses on MLS for us to buy because it was a buyer's market. As the market started to swing back up, as investors, right, if you were around at that time, you know you couldn't find a deal. Like, you couldn't find deals. There was no deals to find, right? You couldn't just go on MLS and say, I want to buy 5 houses today.
Nah.
So I'm like, man, inventory is starting to tighten up. Like, it's starting to become, I didn't even know the word inventory at the time, right? I'm like, it's starting to get harder to get a house, right?
right. You knew that thing was a thing.
Yeah, I'm like, man, it's getting harder to get a deal. And so I'm like, okay, what about building houses? So I had just bought a house in a historic area of Richmond that was, and I didn't notice, I had bought it kind of sight unseen because the price was crazy cheap.
Yeah.
We go in, we open the front door, our whole house is caving in. So my contractor's like, hey man, like, we should just knock this down and build a new house. I'm like, yeah, that sounds dope. You know,
I don't know how to do that.
I don't know how to build a house, bro, right?
Was there any fear in that moment? Like,
No, it wasn't any fear. I just didn't know how to build a house, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, man, I don't know. I hear you, right? But that's not going to be the play, right? Because I don't know how to do that. And he's like, man, he challenged me on it, right? Resistance. He's like, man, it's not that hard. And I'm like, okay. So I'm at home and I'm like, well, he said it ain't that hard, right? So how hard could it truly be to build a house?
let me start to figure it out.
Let me figure it out. And so I'm like, okay, well, like, you know, how do I fast track this? Like, because I already got the loan. Like, I already bought the house.
You have to move on it quickly.
It's a hard money loan, right?
Yeah,
So this
time is ticking.
of the essence,
Yeah.
right? So, you know, I'm like, okay, well, I don't have time to personally figure out how to flip a house or build a house. So what I do is I call a small, shout out to Rick Scott, man. All right, shout out to Ricky Scott in Richmond. All right, so I call up this random builder. We had never met, never talked before, but I knew he was young and black, and it was in my city, right?
Getting to it.
He was getting to it. So I call him up, tell him who I am, what I'm doing. He's impressed. He's like, wait, you how old? You doing what? He's like, I'm like, yeah, let's get lunch. So literally we go to lunch, take on the Panera bread. You know, the old business meat move back in the day was always Panera bread.
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
So we're heading over to Panera. We're getting lunch, man.
That was the Starbucks before Starbucks.
That facts. So I pull out my checkbook, right, while we're having lunch. And I pull out my checkbook, I pull out a pen, and I say, hey, Ricky, man, I want to pay you to learn how to build houses. And he's like, what?
What?
Like, what are you talking about, bro? Like, what do you like? What he's like? What are you like? What's going on? Like, what are you doing? You know? Like, I literally got my checkbook in my hand. Like, how
Bro,
much?
Relax.
Right? He's like, yeah, you gotta relax. Like, slow it down. So I'm like, no, like, I'm dead up. Like, I'll write you a check right now, right? And so he's like, hey man, let me think about it. Like, I'll get back to you tomorrow. Like, I don't even know how I would go about that.
How that would even work.
He calls me the next day and says, hey man, if you could pay me $3,500, I'll teach you how to build the house. I'll give you all my SOPs, and I'll walk through the first one with you.
$3,500?
Shout out to Rick Scott. All right. So I say, okay. So I meet up with him that day. I give him $3,500, and he did exactly what he said he would do. He showed up on my job site.
That's a good brother right there.
Great brother. He showed up on my job site. He gave me all of his SOPs. His phone line was always open anytime I had a question. Still a friend to this day. I was able to go on and do millions and millions of dollars worth of business from that $3,500 investment. And the lesson there is to invest in yourself, right? You know, it could have been I gave him $3,500 and it didn't work. Like he wasn't able to communicate to me in a way to learn that.
That's right.
But it worked. So it was able to explode this new growth opportunity for me in business. So I kind of started getting into building houses, and because I'm like, well, everybody else is still focused on trying to figure out how to get inventory.
Fixing and flipping.
What is all this infill land around? Let me just grab
Drop
that.
a couple on there.
Because it was the same process. It was, if you wanted to buy 5 lots, it was just like it was before with the houses. You could go get 5 lots because nobody was building infill really.
That's right.
So I pivoted into that. I'm still doing all the fix and flips, but I'm scaling now by now adding the vertical of buying lots and building new construction houses. So I started to kind of get into that. That starts to become, you know, a monster in itself. You know, being an infill lot builder, I focused on, you know, 2 to 3 specific communities in Richmond that I built in. We did a lot of construction, a lot of houses, and eventually started formulating into a brand, and it became like this thing. And I started kind of losing peace and kind of happiness in that.
And what you were doing.
Right. You know, I'm at Lowe's all day, every day. I'm dealing with contractor disputes and, you know, all this different stuff, getting sued and, you know, just starting to deal with the problems of being an entrepreneur and, you know, trying to manage growth and scale. And so, you know, then I kind of started in 2017 to fast forward a bit. You know, I'm running these businesses over those years, right? You know, building houses, fixing and flipping. I'm not wholesaling. So, you know, selfishly, I had stopped wholesaling.
And that's where you started. You gave it up.
Yeah. And so in era, right, I stopped wholesaling. And because I'm like, man, I'm making so much money, right? Flipping and building. I don't even got time to.
And if you were fixing and flipping, you could wholesale things to yourself. It made sense.
Right.
But now you're just doing lots. So it's like, I don't need that.
So here's the deal, right? So I still would do my own marketing though. But only for my own inventory. If it didn't fit, you know, my buy box, then I just, you know, we didn't do anything with it. And so to fast forward a bit, you know, in 2017, I started to deal with cash flow problems. You know, I'm growing this monster of a business. My lifestyle has now shifted, you know, so now my expenses and different things are different. I'm not eating at Applebee's on the 2 for $20 no more.
Right.
Right. You know,
You're going to Del Frisco.
It's up right now. We at Del Frisco's. I need that buttercream cake. Like, what's going on? Right. And so, you know, you naturally start to spend more, you start to do more, you start to, you know, ego, right? You start to want to do bigger, more business, bigger projects, you know, all these different things, man. I was guilty kind of all of that. And so I started to kind of run into these problems. And my burn rate, I'm spending through $200,000 a month before I can make any money. You know, just kind of managing and scaling this company.
How old were you at this time?
Man, I was back then 28, 29, you know that. So that's a lot.
It is.
Right? Not college educated. I ain't go to school for finance or, you know, this, that, and the third. You know.
Didn't have anyone directly doing that business, right? You had a home build. You had a contractor, but not necessarily a home builder in the way that you were building.
I mean, it was really, and this is me answering your question that sparked this, because what it was is just me failing.
Yeah.
Just me failing.
That's
But I could accept that failure though. So as I was having these moments of failure, I could accept that I wasn't a failure.
That's right.
Just failing at different things at different moments.
Every entrepreneur has this moment.
Right.
Those moments.
And so I'm like, man, all I gotta do is just figure out what's causing the failures. And so I start to weed through this and kind of start to figure out the pieces. And I'm like, wait, like, hold on. Why are we not wholesaling again? And I'm like,
especially if you're having cash flow issues.
Why are we not wholesaling, right? We got all these leads to come in, but we only just keep, if it's not in these 3 neighborhoods, then we just toss it. And so I realized, like, man, like, the landscape of wholesaling is different. You know, this is 2017. When I started, it was Friday nights, you know, licking stamps, stuffing envelopes, writing letters, you know, hoping and praying that, you know, you could
Someone
get a
will
shot.
respond. Yes.
You know, what I was able to kind of transition into, man, was the realization that wholesaling had become more tech-driven, right, and process-driven.
Skip tracing.
You got skip tracing, you know, you got websites where if you want to send out those same yellow letters, you go
They'll do
click
it
a button
all.
and they're doing it all for you at 38 cents a postcard or a letter. And so it played to my skill set. I'm like, oh, like this is just a process thing,
Yeah.
right? Like I just got to figure out why it works that way, right? And so once I kind of went same application. So then I'm trying to figure out like, okay, well, like, how do you put this process together? Why does this do this? Why does this do that? And so we were able to rapidly, in a very quick pace, you know, shift into wholesaling a lot of houses. So by 2018, it's booming again, right? Late 2018, it's starting to really boom for me
Put the
again.
gas on the fire.
Yeah, and so we kind of started shifting out of, you know, like you mentioned, you know, having 26, 27 projects simultaneously running at a time. That takes a lot. You know, it's not like there's a cluster in one spot. These are spread out all over the city. It's a lot of moving back and forth. You got
Tough, man.
people, you know, working for you, trying to help and different things. And so, again, another pivot point. And I'm tying this into the importance of knowing when to pivot,
Right.
but more importantly, trusting your pivot foot. And so what I've been able to do is just trust my pivot foot, because I don't have the fear of failure. I don't have the fear of judgment. You know, I don't have the fear of not meeting somebody else's expectations. You know, I'm just somebody that's constantly just trying to figure out the process.
That's it.
And I can accept the failure, you know, in those moments, man. And so I use my pivot foot. We get into wholesaling. It's a process tech-driven business now. And that just, you know, just fit to my natural skill set. You know, that starts to go crazy. And, you know, 2019, I'm starting to get recognized for being a top level wholesaler, and which was, you know, kind of an identity thing too, right? Because I had for so long been attached to being a home builder or being a fix and flipper or whatever the case might be. So that was a transition point. And so kind of stepped into that, you know, started aggressively, like I said, wholesaling. That's going really well. And so to kind of get to the question about my students. And so in December 2019, 13 guys in Richmond, Virginia, man, shout out to them, my Lions Den crew. You know, I have a conversation with these guys. One guy in particular, man, shout out to Eric Hunter. And at the time, I had been mentoring him a bit, right? I didn't know that he had been incarcerated. I only knew the story he gave me. But there was this whole other stuff he had battled through. But I had always poured into him because he reminded me of me. And he came, we sat down, had a cigar, man, and he's like, yo, you changed my life. Like, I'm taking care of my kids. I'm taking care of my family. I'm good. Like, I'm a felon, bro. And you changed my life. I want you to know that, though. And I want to tell you thank you. And so I'm like, bro, it's smooth. Like,
It's all good.
yeah, I'm like, he kind of saucing it, not saucing it, but like, I'm thinking like, why you putting so much sauce? I'm like, bro, like it's
You were kind of undervaluing the impact.
right. I'm like, hey man, it ain't no thing, bro. Like, I rock with you, man. Like, it's cool. And he's like, no, you don't understand what I'm telling you. And he goes, you need to help people. And he's like, why aren't you helping anybody? And I'm like, bro,
I'm busy working.
yeah, man. I'm like, I don't got time to be doing courses and holding meetups and this, that, and the third, bro. I'm like, look, man, if y'all catch me here while I'm having a cigar, we can click up. But that's probably the extent of that, man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's like, yo, you're bugging. And he goes, you don't even realize how many people you've helped. I'm like, okay. You know what I mean? He goes, man, I'm going to put a dinner together. And let's have everybody there that you've helped in town, right? And I'm like, all right, man. I'm like, cool,
Whatever.
bro. Yeah. Like 2-3 weeks later, man, we set up this dinner at Roof Chris. You know, I pull up, 13 guys in there, and they literally just in there saluting, like appreciating, like, man, this is how you helped me. This is what you did. Again, moments where I planted seeds, had no idea, was just kicking it, having a conversation, having a cigar, or whatever the case might be. But they were able to get breadcrumbs or get game or get information they were able to take and use to go up, drastically change their life. And so in that moment, I'm like, man, like this is crazy. Like,
Yeah.
I gotta do something, but I didn't know what that really looked like. A week later, man, Al Sharpton is preaching at the church that I go to. My mom, you know, she's like, you know, all, you know, Southern black moms, right? She's really vested in the church, right? Heavy, right?
For sure.
You know,
South Carolina.
right? She ushering on the financial board, you know, doing all these different things. So she's like, hey, like, we got Al Sharpton coming. You need to come, whatever, man. So I'm like, I'm good on Al. Like,
That's what I would have been too.
I'm like, you know, shout out to him, but I'm like, I'm good on that. Like,
Yeah.
I don't like some of his stuff. Like, I'm a pass. And it was on a Saturday. A couple days later, Saturday. It was one of them Saturdays. Woke up, man, just feeling good. Life felt good. I'm like, man, I really ain't doing nothing today. Like, it was one of those random Saturdays. I work a lot, like 7 days a week. It was just one of those days I didn't have nothing to do. And so I was like, man, you know, it probably would go a long way with my mom if I pulled up to the church.
Yeah.
Even though I don't want to, if I went, moms would probably feel good about
It's
that.
no harm, no foul, right?
It ain't hurting nothing.
It's not hurting you.
So I pull up. I text my mom like, hey, could I still get in? Because they were selling tickets. It was sold out. She's like, I got you, you know, like, boom, boom, boom. Right. So I'm in there. And this is the classic, the preacher's preaching and he just talking to you. Packed church, but he's talking to you, right? And Al Sharpton, man, that's my first time ever hearing him preach, man. He's an incredibly great, gifted preacher.
Can only imagine.
And he's preaching, and he said something, man, that hit me. I started crying in church. And he was like, look, he said, man, the problem with some of us is that we crack the code, we go have some success, we start making some money. What do? We leave wherever we're from or wherever we're used to. We out in the suburbs.
Mm-hmm.
We got a nice house out in the nice suburbs in a nice school district, you know, and we just kind of forget about everybody else. We started build our whole new bubble, our whole new life, our whole new existence.
Yeah.
And he's like, man, I only rock with people who reach back.
That's real.
And if you're one of these people and you're not extending your hand back, what does that say about you?
Part of the problem.
Part of the problem. And I'm hit. Like I'm like, dang. I'm a problem. How have I been able to do and accomplish all this at this age? And I have not reached my hand back.
That's real.
What does that say? That's not who I think that I am. That's not who I feel that I am.
Yeah.
So I got to make some adjustments.
It's time.
So I called my guy, Eric. I'm like, bro, you know what? Like, let's do something then. Like, okay. Like, if you saying I need to help, I need to have some impact, like, all right, let's do something then. So we started this group called the Lions Den in Richmond, Virginia. It was a local coaching group. Shout out to everybody who was ever in that group, man. Because I wouldn't even have or do what I got going right now if it wasn't for that group.
Gotcha.
And so, you know, we're kicking it. I'm starting to teach people, and a lot of those 13 guys were in that group, and that started to grow and manifest itself. And so, you know, that kind of, the Lions Den kind of started, it was making its own noise. Like it became kind of this, you know, macro movement kind of in Richmond, VA. And from there, man, like I just realized like, oh, this is even bigger than me in every capacity possible. You know, why am I not doing this nationally? So then I'm like, okay, how can I transition this to being, you know, something where I can help and impact and serve people nationally? And the whole premise, man, to the U charged up, everything that I'm doing is at its simplest form. Like everybody sees what I'm doing or the trajectory of what's happened for me in the last 2 years in terms of online business and, you know, student growth and all that stuff is cool. But at its core, it was the realization that I had to go through all this stuff.
Yeah.
Like I had to get punched in the face. I had to get knocked down. I had to get stepped on. I had to, you know, we've all seen that roadkill in the street left for dead. Everybody's just driving by as it's breathing out. And I'm like, man, like somebody's got to be who I needed. Because in this whole conversation, I'm realizing I'm like, dang, like everybody ain't had a chance to had the type of exposure my parents gave me.
That's
To be able to be placed in these rooms like my parents placed me in.
That's right.
To be able to, be able to recognize opportunity or bump into this contractor or meet this guy or do this or do that. And so now it's on me to be that, to bottle that up and be that for the people who don't have the access to those things.
So more roses can grow from the concrete.
More roses can go for the concrete. And so when I go on this journey, really at the beginning of 2020, of how can I be for, anybody that needs it, what I needed when I wanted to get in this business, when I came in, wet behind the ears, was hungry for the money, thought I would get started, be driving a Ferrari in 60 days, That's
what some of the videos were saying back then, right?
Like all of that, right? Like, all right, like how can I give them the real though? Like how can I really make sure they know, hey, you do this, but don't do that, right? Now, if you do that, this is what's gonna happen.
Right.
And so, I got this thing that I say all the time, and like to my students, like, the first man through the door is the one who gets shot. And so, like, I've already walked through the door. Like, I kicked it in, right? Like, I kicked that in, right?
Yeah.
And so, for me, it got to the point of, like, okay, like, I just got to pour out to others from the lessons and those failures.
That's right.
Right? Let me speak from those
You've earned
experiences.
that.
100%.
And now you want to pay it forward.
Got to pay it forward, man. So we put Charged Up University together. It's been super dope, man. I've got amazing students. I've been able to see people have incredibly great progress. I teach people how to wholesale real estate, how to do your first deal.
Nice.
If you're, a lot of wholesalers, I was one of these people as well, where you can't figure it out. You're only doing one a deal here and there every couple months.
How do you scale this company, this operation?
Right. So then kind of building a platform and a membership community at a time when nobody else was really doing membership communities at all.
That's true.
Right? Like, I'm like, man, like I need to build kind of a circle that people can step into and leave everything else behind. They can leave, the parents that don't believe in them, the spouse that doesn't believe in them, the friends that aren't doing the right thing, the fear of failure, the fear of embarrassment. Like, you can walk into this circle and you safe. Like, I'm taking you in, I'm pouring into you, we gonna get you right.
Yeah.
All I'm asking for you to do is step into the circle ready to go. If you're not ready to go yet, don't come in yet. But if you're ready and you want to put some work in and you want to change your life and get what you really truly deserve, we gonna get you there. Like, I'm gonna pour into you. The student, coaching that I put in place, they're gonna pour into you. Other students are gonna pour into you, because there's something special about being in a space where other people can relate to whatever it is in each moment that you got going on, a part of this process, of growth. But I mean, that's really the truth, and kind of, and this is the first time I've even really kind of said that. But kind of really the true, point and meaning behind, Charged Up. I think sometimes with these online businesses, be quite frank, you make a lot of money from them. I make good money from my coaching business, and that's no secret. But, we can oftentimes kind of get lost in thinking it's about that, when that's just a byproduct of impact.
Which we said at the beginning of the conversation right there.
100%.
Man, been a good conversation. It went a little different than I thought it would, but hey.
We might got to do a part 2 sometime.
Yeah,
man.
we definitely will. But before that, I want to watch a couple different podcasts. I like certain elements from it. All the Smoke does this thing called Quick Hitters. And they ask a few questions that I think, I like them, so I'm going to borrow a few.
All right, cool.
First one, man, top 5 dinner guests, dead or alive.
Top 5.
Not including yourself. It could be anybody
dinner guests
of all time.
Dead or alive.
Yes, sir.
I kind of gotta rack that into.
And
why? So I got a couple, man. First, I would definitely say Jay-Z.
Yeah. Hov is on my table too.
Yeah, man. So for me, like, Hov's trajectory, what he's been able to kind of, really do over time.
Yeah.
I identify with it a bit. He's been able to, he's taken some shots.
Yeah.
A good bit of them.
Still continues to take them.
And he's pushed through. He's grown. He's evolved. He stepped into his social justice calling and all these different things.
Yeah, bro.
I'd love to have a conversation with him. God bless the dead, man, Kobe Bryant.
He is in my top 5 too.
Yeah, man. If I'm a Kobe fanatic. You know, Kobe to me personally is the greatest basketball player to ever touch the rock. And I would want him at my table because what drew me to Kobe and why he was my favorite player, it's never the argument for me about, you know, skill set or titles or whatever, right?
Yeah.
For me, he was just a dog. He mentally only, like his focus was just pure insanity.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah, like literally pure insanity. Like I remember he had that case, I think it was in Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And, you know, I just remember as a kid watching him leave court, get on a jet,
Yeah.
fly
Like same
to a
day.
game the same day,
Same day.
and go
2004.
drop 40. And I just remember being like, yeah, what kind of mental toughness do you gotta have to
When he's going through that with his wife, his daughters, his family, and block everything out. And it's
to
just,
perform at an elite,
yeah,
you know,
it's different.
high level, man. I like the concept of that is, again, like, you know, literally pure insanity.
Okay.
You know,
Hov and Kobe. That's interesting because, yeah, those two solidified on any one of my top 5 lists.
no question, man. Like
So,
they gotta be at the
Alright.
table.
And you set them first, so that.
Yeah,
knew
man,
I
for
knew
sure.
I messed with you.
No doubt. You know, third, I would probably say Gandhi keeps coming to mind for
Okay.
me. You know, in the capacity of like, just, you know, like you said, it's like, man, this kind of almost became like a philosophical conversation.
Yeah.
You know, I've just learned over time that life is simply about perspective. And,
100%.
you know, having, you know, somebody around you that can offer kind of unique or different perspective, you know, I think is dope. I think that's important. So that would definitely be a third.
Cool.
I'd say a fourth. I'm trying to think kind of somebody in business, and the first person that comes to mind when I think business, and this might be a different one, Mark Cuban. I'm a big Mark Cuban fan from a business context.
Oh, for sure. I'm gonna speak for itself.
Knowing his story, you
Yeah.
know, starting broadcast.com and like just
Are you
Just
running a restaurant bar?
pushing, like just pushing and taking shots, just pushing
boom,
and taking
boom.
shots. And, you know, what I've kind of seen over the years is it started really for me when he bought the Mavericks.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember at the time reading all the articles about how he was so intentional about upgrading the arena, upgrading the locker rooms, you know, really taking care of his players.
Which now is a standard in the league
Standard in
that
the
wasn't at
league.
the time in which he
Yeah,
did it.
they weren't doing any of that. And I remember having a point of reflection like, man, like, take care of your people first,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, if you taking care of the people with you and around you, you know, that is how you truly grow, reinvest in your business.
Yeah.
You know, most people don't know this. I didn't pay myself for the first 2 years. So from 2010, I talked about how I started making money. I didn't pay myself out of my business until 2012. So I was still working at T-Mobile making $15 an hour, still living at home with my mom, and I'm making a lot of money. But I never took a buck out of it, never took a penny out of it. I continued to reinvest, and that's truly how I was able at an early age to really scale so rapidly. It's because I was willing to do that.
Okay.
What was that, 4?
Yeah, so we are at Jay-Z, Kobe, Gandhi, Mark Cuban.
Yeah, so who would I go 5, man? My 5 is gonna be a little different too. Steve Stout. The reason it would be Steve Stout is because every time, you know, I've heard him in interviews or heard him share perspective, what I kind of have gained, because and for him, it was either him or Maverick Carter was really kind of first coming to mind.
see that.
So it's really kind of because they kind of, to me, they kind of think that it seems from the outside and they think the same,
Yeah.
where they seem to have these strategic approaches to what they're doing and how they're applying themselves, and they also like use their pivot foot.
Yeah. I mean, they're playing chess with the game of business.
100%. And so I admire that. You know, I consider myself somebody that practices and understands strategy and calculating out your moves and really understand what you are or aren't doing. And so I've seen, Steve Styles like crazy relevant in the business of music today.
Yeah, which is
has
insane.
been for what, 20, 30
30
years?
years, bro.
Longevity means
It
a
matters.
lot,
Yeah,
especially in volatile businesses. Music industry is a volatile business, much like real estate.
for sure.
Over time, the music industry has greatly shifted. All the way back to the Napster, LimeWire days,
Yeah.
to the MP3 streaming days, and all. So like, to be able to navigate and pivot through all of that
And still
and
be,
stay relevant and still be doing business
for sure.
consistently at an elite level, like he gotta be at my dinner, bro. Like I need him there because like I said, I've had to practice using my pivot so many times.
Yeah.
So having somebody with that kind of perspective at the table, like I gotta stay rooted, I gotta stay humble. Kobe, I gotta keep that mentality. I gotta, Hove, it's like, man, I gotta push through anything, I gotta make it happen. Mark Cuban, it's like, yo, what's the business moves? Like, it's pour into our people. Let's do this, let's do that. So that'd be my starting 5 epic dinner lineup for sure.
I like it. All right, 2 more questions.
Yeah.
1, you got an intro song to your life, what would it be?
Man, that's tough. Man, all right, I'm torn between 2.
All right, give me both. Give me the theme. Is it night and day? Is it happy and sad? Like, why is it, or do both of them represent the same thing for you?
Both represent the same to me, really.
Okay.
It's domination.
All right, give me the 2.
So Blueprint, all right? The Ruler's Backtrack.
Yeah.
All right. I remember I bought the CD at Circuit City. It's the first track. It's the intro track. I get in the car. This is back in the CD days, right? I had the aftermarket deck. Packaging was, you know what I mean? So I'm pulling the CD out.
Did you buy it or it was
For
bootleg?
sure, yeah.
Oh,
I
okay.
bought it. Had it bootleg
So it
too.
wasn't just a slit. It was an actual booklet in it.
100%.
I bet.
So, boom, I put it in the car, man. First track hits, and I'm like,
Oh yeah, that's it.
okay. Like, he's talking in a way on that track, like, y'all got me messed up. Like, I'm here to take things over. I'm here to dominate. I'm here to be intentional. And I know that I operate in a capacity that you can't stop anything that's happening. So that's definitely a soundtrack to my life. Like, that would be a song. The second one, man, would be Get Your Mind Right by Jeezy. And because of the pivot, right? We've been talking kind of about the pivot conversation. Jeezy pivoted.
Oh yeah.
He was a successful street pharmacist.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? But also had the wherewithal, like, hey, this probably ain't gonna go forever.
Pivoted into rapping, then pivoted into business, right? Like, Jeezy.
That's why he out here on the West Coast now versus in the A, right? So that track for me, the beginning of that track is Jeezy talking about how, like, I'm elite, right? Like,
Don't get it twisted. Anything I do.
I'm elite, and I'm coming in strong. Anything that I'm coming into, anything that I'm starting, anything that I want to do, I'm coming in heavy.
Yeah.
Don't have the perspective that I'm just out here rapping. I'm trying to get a song to pop. Nah, I'm for real.
Yeah.
And that song really kind of embodies like that energy of just like, I've been doing this. Like, this ain't new. I'm just pivoting, right? I'm just pivoting. But in my last play, I was killing that. The last play before that, man, I was killing that too.
And just know these next couple, I'm
So
gonna kill
just
it with.
understand, if
This
you
is
just
who I
see,
am.
come on, man, if you just see me pivot again,
I'm
there
coming
should
to
be
kill.
no doubt in your mind that I'm coming to body this.
Yeah.
I'm coming to run it and take it over.
Done.
So that would be my 2 songs.
I love it, man. Last question of the day, brother. If you could recommend anyone to come onto the podcast, who would you want to see? But before you answer that, you have to have a connection to them and be able to kind of get them in.
Dope. Oh man, who would I want to see? Man,
It could be anybody. We trying to
Oh,
tell
just-
the stories
just-
of emerging. entrepreneurs, people in business. It could be someone close, it could be someone kind of far, but you kind of know them, but they would be dope here.
Man, it's gonna sound crazy, but I would say Ricky Scott. Because I would be curious, because he was like the generation before me of builders. But he also pivoted too. You know, I met him, he was a home builder. You know, now he runs a successful, you know, home healthcare business, absolutely crushing it. And we had a lot of intense conversations around pivoting.
Okay.
At a time, he was giving me lessons at a time where I didn't understand that I had been pivoting all that time. Because I was struggling with the current move, right, the current pivot. And he had just kind of started leaving home building at a time where the home building was booming. You know, this is like, I think 2016, right? So it was hot, right? So for him to exit out of that and then move into home healthcare, like, even though him and I are close and that's my guy, you know, there's something special about candid conversations and just, he's just such an interesting dude. Just if I was able to kind of get more insight into kind of all of his plays, his story, how he's been able to kind of do what he's been able to do, I think that would be
very compelling story to be told.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
my background is in real estate and I own a home healthcare company, so
yeah. So maybe I gotta
let's
figure that out for sure. Yeah,
man. Thank you, brother. I appreciate it. The conversation, in my opinion, was phenomenal. Beautiful day out here. Luckily, there's no rain, no wind, no nothing. But yeah, bro, thank you for everything.
Man. For sure.
This is the Rose and Grew. I'm your host, Brandon Rule. Thank you for tuning in. Make sure to join and look at our membership group. Similar to what Chris is doing, we're launching our own and we're building a community around people that are interested in entrepreneurship, not wholesaling. But you're going to be very much so involved, and I'm going to be very much so involved. So we brothers at the end of the day. Thank you for tuning in. Over and out. Peace. Thank you for joining. Appreciate you making it this far. If you liked the episode, share it with a friend, like, comment, subscribe on all YouTube and social media outlets. Also, make sure you check us out at our website, theroseandgrew.com. You'll see various things such as our merch, as well as, more importantly, a membership community that we've created for people interested in real estate and entrepreneurship. So, any other questions, comments, concerns, share it with us. We would love to hear your feedback. That's the only way we get better. Thank you. See you next week. Peace.